Hello and welcome to the aForm show. My name is Alan George and thank you very much for tuning in. Each week, we sit across from thought leaders and change makers in the architecture and design space of the GCC. We dive deep into their experiences, both professionally and personally, and share their valuable insight as to what makes them tick. Our goal is to add value to your day and help you navigate your own personal creative journey. Finally, the opinions and the views of the guest speakers are that of their own. They do not necessarily represent the views and the opinions of the show or the host. Hello everyone, welcome to the show. On this week's episode, we have Wisam Allami, a proud alumnus from the University of Sharjah and founder of LAMI Architects. Wissam has spent close to a decade honing his skills in contemporary design. His approach is a careful balance between functionality and aesthetics. Detailing is the critical design phase that truly translates a project from rendering to reality. This phase is of particular interest to Wissam and his team, and in this episode, we're going to find out the radical new steps that they're taking towards achieving exactly that. Their built work truly does speak for itself. I highly recommend you check them out. So without further ado, let's get into it. Hi, Wissam. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
Are you nervous? You seem nervous.
Yeah, exactly. It's first time to do this. So.
All right. Don't worry. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
It'll be fine. So we'll start you off with an easy one.
Mm-hmm.
You should have the answer to this by now because it's been a while. Mm-hmm. So the first question to you is, you're a fairly young designer, like relatively speaking. What made you, or what rather motivated you to kind of start LAMI Architects? As in, why would you want to sort of start your own firm? What was the reasoning behind it and what motivated you to do it?
I mean, as you know, always all architects would have this dream, even if it doesn't come true. But every architect has the goal to open their own firm.
Right.
My plans was accelerated 10 years earlier than what it should happen.
Right.
It was when I break the barriers. Like always, some people had their personal barriers to stop them from doing something.
Right.
So then once this is gone, LAMI was formed.
Right.
2017, June.
Right.
Was the beginning.
Yeah. I imagine that by that time, of course, you must have had some experience in practice as well prior to starting it. Was that the case?
Yes, I've been fortunate enough to work in a smaller organization.
Perfect.
Where, again, we are exposed to all aspects.
Right.
But then it's also getting mentored by the owner of the company.
Right.
Maybe not like closely, but then coupling that with, motivation and wanting to learn every aspect of what I'm doing.
Right.
Even like considering this in my education years, I was always looking to understand the steps of doing the architecture or building to communicate it to a normal basic labor.
Right. Right.
So from that, starting from university until really like practicing for 5 years before starting LAMI, that was the building up.
Right.
But then aiming to be always, I reach it at certain age, I get certain education, this is the barriers that I'm talking about, was leading towards, let's say, more 10 years to start the brand.
Right.
But then once this barrier was removed, then LAMI has started.
So I'm going to ask a very obvious question then, because I'm sure people listening would think, how did he do it? So how did you remove that barrier? Was it something conscious or was it something which just happened one day and you realized I can do it now?
Some experiences which would ease, or change your thinking sometimes. Okay. It's like certain experience would say, oh, I could do this. So you remove one barrier.
Right.
Some others, remove the other barrier.
Right.
So it's time, the right time, I think.
Okay. So I guess my sort of follow-up question would be, there's normally a problem that young firms have, especially young firm owners have, which is difficult to get work because you lack built project experience. Mm-hmm. And you don't get built project experience until you get work for it. It's kind of like this catch-22 situation, which is kind of avoided when, say, people who have been in the field for longer, they tend to have a much larger, more, sort of convincing portfolio of built work. It leads to a lot of confidence to the firm that they start knowing that, that can be carried on into the firm. Was this a problem that you had with LAMI when you started, that there were clients coming to you demanding built work, or was it something different?
Maybe at LAMI, we were fortunate is to let's say, have an overlap with a career to shift to this. I mean, as a, let's say, first projects or first 2 projects.
Right.
Was an overlap. That was like our early clients, which we're still working with now, was respecting this, understanding this.
Right.
And we really were collaborative and cooperative with them. Like we deliver much beyond what they wanted or expected. So maybe it was the first push only. And then I would say still people in every time they will ask for built projects.
Right.
But in architecture, as you know, it takes time. It takes, for now we are 4 years and still not really like a big portfolio of built projects.
Right.
And then also maybe not the right project to each client comes,
Right.
Some people would ask, I want my, let's say, mall project. Did you do that? Did you build that?
Right.
Or a residential house, like private, not a commercial. But what we have done so far is a commercial.
Right.
So different levels. So it will never reach there. Like, I think people should understand what you think and you show them. We have built a portfolio of design and few of built, but in architecture is very slow pace.
Right.
It's not like in other disciplines, like it's much faster. Maybe in a year you could have 2-3 projects done already.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a challenge, but I think by now we are used to this and we are fine.
Okay. Yeah. So that sort of explains how LAMI started. So I now kind of want to fast forward to where we are now. So at the moment, what's the kind of projects which LAMI would like to be doing? The kind of projects which you would target and go after? What's the kind of ideal sector or, kind of industry that you want to be in at the moment?
I would say to, let's say, summarize our direction at LAMI as a projects, because, we have a bigger vision as a LAMI brand, not necessarily only architectural design, which maybe we'll speak later on about it. But I would say we are specialized at crafting spatial experiences.
Okay.
Whether that's a residential or a hospitality project, where we are working in this niche. So it's a residential of single residence, like homes for families, or it's commercial for rental or for sale. That also led us to enter a sector of resorts, because we are crafting these experiences with in-out experiences.
Right.
So we are entering now into resorts or unique destinations. So we currently have, hopefully we'll continue to the next step in the project, a resort in India, a wellness resort.
Okay.
And currently we are pushing to work on a very private destination that disconnects you from the world in a raw area in Hatta.
Okay.
So that's another resort. So it's linked, but then we have done a few other projects, few other types of projects, like from a mall or interior architecture of a building, a residential building, or even a campus, a university campus. But then when you link all of that, you say, we want to work with a client who has a vision or a partial vision.
Right.
So we can craft their spaces.
Right.
And we want to make these spaces unified in design language, not a commercial, building that has been done by an architect from outside, then an interior designer from inside, and the landscape architect from outside, and then it's like nothing is talking to each other. We want to create a comprehensive built architecture that has the same language everywhere. Because we found this is like, even if we collaborate under our umbrella with interior designers, interior architects, landscape architects, the language will have a difference,
True, because they're all coming from different interpretations of the brief. It's not like, like you said, one single source of design. So, I mean, that's but natural, and that's quite common. I mean, you see it happen quite a lot, unfortunately, in this region. But that's good to know that that's what you guys are sort of focusing on, because I'd like to get your opinion on this. We were discussing this earlier about how, as architects always say we can do everything.
Yeah.
Right. And as much as there are other people listening to this podcast, it's true. We actually can do everything. But the question then remains, is it sort of worth our time now if there are specialists who can probably do a much better job under our guidance rather than us do it ourselves? Do you think we're at that stage now wherein we can start to kind of just have design kind of overview or give design direction and have specialists actually carry out the work? Or do architects still need to be involved in order to kind of, bring the vision to reality?
I think bringing another stakeholders like specialists, designers, when the project gets bigger, this is a must. But then getting the same, let's say, same mentality or same way of thinking consultants to work with you, and then you guide them the vision that you've been communicated or you have been crafted during the design. I mean, communications.
Right.
Communication is the way to do it. You need to communicate, you need to have a clear vision of what you want in the project. Then you can get it with different stakeholders, but then they should be all on the same page. Because the issue sometimes, because we work with AOR, for example, Architect of Records, and we see how some of them lack communications internally. So
right.
we are pushing towards breaking this barrier of communication, like internally, plus if we have a stakeholder with us, we should break this also communications with them and then make it like smooth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything in particular which you as a firm are doing to sort of improve the communication internally and externally?
I think it's building the team, the right team members who can communicate easily.
Right.
A team members who doesn't have that ego in architecture, as you know, like important. Always is like some people which lacks all aspects of architecture, and then you have like a big ego. You can see a big ego.
Right.
I think hiring the right team member or like building the right team member that has these skills, and they don't, we are, for example, in the office, we work in a horizontal way, but with a system, with a structure. So that way is like there is no hierarchies or this should be happening also with our consultants.
Right.
The same way, breaking the communication barriers. We are working also with international designers, and we have been through this. Like since 2 years, we have like unique projects has been crafted like in Dubai and Sharjah. We are working with that, let's say, designer who are practicing from their own city and building around the world.
Right.
And with the break of barrier, like break of communications, they can achieve fantastic projects.
Right, of course.
Imagine like you're building abroad, not really close to you. And we have projects here, let's say in the region where all the stakeholders are inside the city, but they don't have a communications.
Right.
That's why it's not being done well
Right. Okay. So clearly communication, one big hurdle that you need to get over, which if you do, obviously will lead to successful work, successful projects. Is there anything else, any other kind of challenge that you faced, which is similar to, the level of communication, something which sort of disrupts and, kind of slows things down from your experience?
I think workmanship, like in the region where...
You're talking about on-site?
On-site, it could be. We want to refer to design stage or...
Either way. We can do both as well.
I would say the challenges we face here is the workmanship at site. Okay, plus communication as well. But now workmanship, because you want to get the high-level project, like, high-quality projects, you need all your, let's say, stakeholders to improve the design in all stages. So if you are like just suffering from getting it right first, that's a challenge,
Right.
While if you work with the right partners to improve your project, like even I believe in the design stages, in each design stage, if there is no improvement, that's for me not a progress, So usually what firms are used to is like to do concepts, freeze, do details, tender it, construct it as it is. So from concept until, there is small engineering, then tendering it out and building it as it is. But then what I see, the process of design should be improvement, like zoomed in,
Right.
Getting zoom in. Then again, in construction, you improve again, item by item, component by component. Design it during construction as well.
Right.
So, yeah.
Then a sort of question which I need to ask is most firms tend to have that model because I think if the architects had their way, they would do exactly like how you said. That seems like the right way to do it. And I think every architect would agree that's the right way to do it. But then the reality of it is there's other sort of requirements that go along with that process, billing and cash flow being one of them. So, I mean, when you have, key milestones and you get paid then, that's fine. But then if you're going to have a sort of iterative process wherein you may, during the detail stage, figure out that you need to change something and, kind of maybe jump back to your concept, rework it a bit, then again, continue and so on. In the event that happens, as a firm owner, how do you kind of account for that, back and forth in terms of your structure of billing?
I mean, over the years, let's say, of forming LAMI until now, we have reached to a very comprehensive process of design,
right,
which will address each item individually in each stage.
Okay.
Which will not confuse the client, for example, by mixing two dimensions at the same time.
Okay.
So let them focus in this stage by spatial experience. No colors at this stage, no materials.
Right.
Then we move, once fixing that with always like you see the main massing and so on.
Right.
Moving then to material. Then moving into like to the, points, to the electric points. So these kind of steps of designs, then to the engineering. So we start being busy in each stage and focus in a certain aspect of the architecture. By this, we have been, the processes has been being developed through the years. It's harming our cash flow. But then once you build this and work backward to make it more efficient, a bit systemized, as I spoken to you earlier, is like we want to write up the process.
Right.
So we have a system of doing it. I think it will not be an issue in the future.
Okay.
By now it's affecting cash flow, as you said. But because I am an architect, by myself.
Right.
And forming this company as not a profit generator for now,
Right.
It's more of, sometimes I would say I'm doing a hobby for now, It's
Right.
not yet the business
Right.
of architecture. But then that's how you build a brand.
Okay. So in your mind, you sort of see this, yes, you are addressing it.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, in the short term, it may lead to a loss. But then once you have it figured out in the long term, it'll just make you a lot more faster and then, cash flow positive by that time.
Yeah.
Okay. Which makes sense. I get the impression you're a very long-term thinker. You're not really someone who thinks much about, the short term at the moment, which is quite interesting, which sort of then leads me to another interesting question. How do you feel about master plans? Do you think there's a bit of a debate going on that master plans tend to normally take so long to, get implemented, and there's so much time that goes into designing them and goes into actually kind of making them a reality, that over that time there may be different designers who have come into it, there have been different stakeholders that have come into it, maybe managements have changed, governments have changed, until the actual master plan gets done. So I guess my question to you is, do you think us as architects should do master planning, or should we leave that to, again, a specialist, for example, who's an urban designer? Should architects be involved in master plans?
I believe in vision first.
Okay.
Like to envision a space or to envision the future of a thing or a place making, you can see this around us, how Dubai has been led by a vision.
Right.
If you have that, then getting into doing is easier. So I don't feel, as a master planner to have a rigid plan or theory, but then it's more of having the vision, doing the master plan and coping with it. Now we could see how Masdar, for example, has a master plan, but then as a progression, they found out there is some challenges that should not be done as the vision started.
Right.
So, but then still they are developing it to reach somewhere, right?
Right.
So I think it's the lean thinking, you don't plan and rigidly execute. You should plan and figure out the issues or mistakes or develop it further.
As you go along.
As you go, then you reach somewhere. Same as even a brand. You started with a thinking or a direction. Then during the time you figure out few things. Then you are lean. You don't be a rigid thinker. Like, I want to reach this goal only. No, it opens up. Maybe there is another direction. I would link it back to like as a firm, as LAMI. Now I'm finding out few different paths, that might be
more
happening.
Interesting. Yeah.
In parallel together or separate.
Okay. Interesting.
So it's like, back to the master plan is like, I believe, yes, there should be a planning, but should be a lean thinking, which can adapt or develop further.
Understood. Okay. So I then sort of now want to pivot a bit towards the business, not so much the architecture and the design of things. Could you maybe, for people who are listening in who have maybe not heard of LAMI yet, which is a big mistake on their part because you should have by now, but what's the kind of business model that LAMI is currently in? Would you say that you're a boutique studio? Would you say that you're kind of just architects? Would you say that, you would want to be this or that? How would you sort of define yourself as a studio at the moment?
I would not say at the moment. I mean, at the moment is being built, it's forming the studio. But then the vision is to stay boutique.
Okay.
Will not expand beyond 30.
Okay.
That's
30 is a pretty big.
Let's say the maximum.
Right.
Always I'm saying, okay, 15, 20, but not beyond.
Right.
Not beyond 30. So this is the current situation, let's say. Very selective to pick the team.
Right.
As a creative thinker.
Right.
So creative thinker members who can, by any means, they are like very early in their career or in the mid or, like has a long experience.
Right.
They should add value to the team. They have a clear communication. But then I would say now the long term, like maybe as a person, I'm combining how I'm into technology. So since day one, we are implementing technology in all aspects. It's like, and it's as like current number of, let's say the team is getting more to do, by the technology.
Okay. So your output is kind of like a 5-person team has an output of say about 8 or 9 people.
Exactly. So, and I found out like step by step how spending time on these technologies as early, I was like sometimes super busy about just thinking about moving from software to manage our projects and transparently manage.
Right.
How helpful it is now to the team.
Right.
How transparent management. What I mean is like now connecting about technology, technology in all aspects. Managing, using the software, using real time. Now we started like getting into 3D printing. So I would say this is one aspect of the future of LAMI, which will stay. So technology. Material is next. We want to experiment into materials. Especially here we are at a market which is, let's say, very rigid at using materials, unusual materials. Okay. So contractors, subcontractors, they don't want to experiment. They don't have that willingness to enter into this. So we are experimenting few, especially, now clients who are in the same,
wavelength
mindset. Exactly. It's like letting us do this together. Even sometimes I would not experiment it on a client, would experiment it on myself, like we want to do a radiant cooling in the region or like geothermal energy. So adapting also another aspect of mechanical engineering and, MEP into the architecture. So experimenting on material, on new technology in the region, which is have been tested around the world, but not really here.
Right. And even if it was maybe done in a very sort of academic way, but hasn't really reached, mainstream construction.
Yeah. And then all of that is combining it with how detail oriented we are. That would see LAMI in the future, would imagine like the next step, we are being in a warehouse where we have a fab lab, we have casual places, we have a place to experiment materials or build, items, and then also getting to the right stakeholders. I'll tell you some examples, like with the project I told you with the international designer, like we were looking into a screen design that literally looked around the world for like a steel fabricator to do it, where let's say in Portugal, we had a supplier that couldn't really figure it out, looked here in Dubai and it's not there. We, like, by chance, we found a subcontractor in an exhibition from Turkey, and then we communicated with them, and then they started solving it with us.
Right.
So I mean, sometimes a very difficult screen design that has a challenges in the like steel design, like calculation and so on, can be done to push the architecture
with the right stakeholder.
Exactly. But in another dimension, I would say very simple screen design that we have been trying to do here, and then our stakeholder trying to show it as like very difficult to do,
Right.
So maybe this is the lack of the market here, that maybe in the future, I'm not sure, I'm right. just saying the lean, growth of
right.
LAMI.
Right.
Maybe we have in-house production of these specialized items,
right.
To push
right.
the architectural,
right.
the architectural designs. Yeah.
Right. I think you touched upon a very interesting topic, which is this is something which even myself, since we tend to be focused more on contemporary design, detailing is very important. Something like a screen design I've had the exact same problem, not being able to find suppliers here. I kind of just want to maybe, suppliers might be a bit too specific. I kind of want to maybe zoom out a bit. Do you sort of feel that same sort of sentiment from the engineering team, for example? People who do your MEP and structure. Do you find that they also at the moment are still not sort of able to bring your designs to life, or rather not be able to imagine creative solutions at the rate that, say, the architecture field is going?
No, actually, the right communication. Like we have, as architects, we have the tools to communicate this.
Right.
And there are like engineers in Dubai who are really advanced.
Okay.
Let's say as a boutique firm, if you are planning to do it with engineering, you will not be able to hire such a talent,
Right.
Then that's why we are set up on this. Like we be the architects,
right.
And we work with other sub-consultants per project, like specifically to each project.
Right.
Then communicate well, you can get the impossibles. I would just easily tell you, here we have steel contractors who can, now Expo is being built. You can see what is happening there. Like Zaha Hadid projects in Azerbaijan and in Miami has been exported from Ajman, literally here, like from UAE.
Okay.
The glass is being manufactured here for Azerbaijan, so capability in the market is extremely good. It's like just some architects are lazy to look for it.
Right.
Or not having the courage to push the boundaries a bit. So,
okay. Interesting. I think that's inspiring for a lot of people listening, because I'm sure, like you said, they too would have faced, issues and find the right sort of collaborators. But it's good to know that they are there. We just got to go looking out for them. As we sort of, wind down the episode, I kind of now want to get your thoughts on the future across multiple fields. So we'll start off with the industry, generally speaking. Where do you sort of see the industry going at the moment over, say, the next 5 to 10 years? Do you see any trends that, are kind of changing? Do you see briefs becoming a little more different? Do you see clients wanting, different things of any kind? I mean, this can be across any sector, any, field, residential, commercial, whatever it may be. But are there things which you're noticing, which are now changing, which will continue to change for the future?
I mean, one of the aspects that's very good in the market here, we have seen a trend of, let's say, in 10 years back, you see clients want more of a traditional way of, let's say, designs. But now it's driven by the market to easily expect people to come and want contemporary designs.
Right.
Not really knowing what's contemporary designs, like saying modern or defined by color, maybe only white,
Right.
Not necessarily that's true. But that's a good thing that, let's say, smoothen you don't need to explain to the client that you have this way of designs.
Right.
But then as a trend, see, Dubai has been built over this past years as a fast development. But now it's the fine tuning. it's the experiences. We see like a lot of destinations here through the past 10 years has been shifted dramatically. That's focused on human scale, focused on walkability.
Right.
So I would say the next direction is to fine-tune experiences in Dubai and UAE in general. People are looking with a high taste, and expectations. So that's really good. We are sensing this in the market.
Okay.
I don't know about other trends. I'm not having like something popping in mind, but
fair enough. But yeah, I would agree, being in the field myself. I would agree. I think it's a very clear stance that's being taken, not just by, individual clients, but even the sort of, like you were saying earlier, the vision, the governmental vision is also along the same lines. So I agree completely. So with the same, sort of staying with, what lies in the future, what do you think is the future of LAMI?
Like as LAMI, I have two directions. As LAMI and as also beyond LAMI or parallel to LAMI, we are working towards a regional eco. Like we are starting from the beginning to have, let's say, projects across UAE, and by now, hopefully to continue on in India, in Iraq previously, and maybe in the future we will have more. But also we want to complete, let's say, what we are working as a niche. We are not stepping on single residency homes, like as usual companies would start with houses, then leave it for bigger developments.
Right.
We don't want to do this. We are focused in our niche. We do unusual projects and our tailored homes, but then we will complete the services from products, from services, So in parallel, we are working closely to form a new brand that focus in interior design, mostly FF&E, where LAMI is focused only more architecture, but the other brand would be focused on furnishing or, like interior design the homes, especially houses.
Right.
But even that's unusual way of designing. We are more visual oriented. We are like with 360 experiences with a very high end quality of renders to see it in reality. The same way. I would say in parallel, I'm working closely with a close friend on developing a research community. We called it so far Plus Future. We are not definitely like defined yet, but then it's a research community that's already has been incubated by Area 2071. We are gathering minds because we figured out you get one idea, but then when you open the idea up, you get maybe hundreds of different ideas.
Right.
So it's not only your thoughts are correct.
Right.
Plus also we are pushing to, let's say, guide a research part of the thesis in universities.
Okay.
To get a result out of it. Like a result which is connected to the real life, not really like theoretical.
Right.
We also sensed like that there is an interest from like long-term experienced people, like already in different fields. We just open up the idea and then we get a sense, okay, I have an idea in my mind, but how I would expose it. So that research hub would gather all of that, and expose it to the people. It's called Plus Future because it adds a plus dimension. So it's either a plus dimension of the future or a plus dimension in a different aspect. So yeah.
That's interesting. Would love to hear more about it, as in when it, formalizes and, becomes what it is. That sounds really interesting. We'd love to, sort of have everyone on the show.
Great.
It sounds awesome. But I completely agree about how, an idea can kind of be the start to so many other ideas across multiple fields even. I think that's brilliant. And I don't think there's anyone actually making that connection so far. Everyone kind of still, generally stays to their industry and doesn't really overlap across industries. This was a conversation I was having earlier with someone today about technology in general and about how the construction industry, as compared to other industries, hasn't really evolved much over the last, say 3-4 decades. Whereas something like technology has completely changed, medicine, for example, or has changed, aviation or hospitality even, it's just completely radicalized their industry. But for us, apart from maybe BIM, there's no, major sort of impact in overall construction. So I think something like Plus Future would definitely get that conversation moving a lot faster. So that's really cool. Thank you so much for doing that. Yeah, that sounds really interesting. I'm just trying to think though, are you going to have the time for everything? Because that's a lot to be doing. And this is from someone who works full-time and has a podcast. So I completely understand how important time is. So do you think you'll be able to do all that?
Now, starting LAMI has been an experience, which, getting all these aspects of, let's say, managing it, forming it, making the process and so on, gave me the ability to be able to do others,
Right.
And then with a visionary, let's say, partners in each step, you can, for example, I would say LAMI as a full-time now, we are building our team to work in a way that will just release me from smaller tasks.
Understood.
To be able to form the other directions. But then also inside LAMI itself will be few, I cannot say now, associate partners, not yet know the exact title.
Right.
But then each person will handle a part as a big stakeholder, as building the brand. So that will, and okay, these stakeholders is not like already like I had a long relationship with them, so I know what's their capability. I can depend sometimes like blindly on the production. I'm talking about, for example, executing the project, site supervision, or, forming this fabrication sector inside LAMI, or handling the design part, I would say, like as a design director. But then I would be the main to overlook all of that.
Yeah.
Currently, I'm looking like into the drawings even,
Right.
Slightly, I could just zoom out and depend totally on my team, who we are building together.
Right.
Then be able to use all this experience into the two others.
Okay.
Because then we have it already.
Right.
And then always your partners in the other sectors lack certain part where we, as a unity, working together as a one platform, we can exchange experiences.
Of course.
The team can exchange experiences and we can be stronger together.
Agreed. That might be the most inspiring thing I've heard this year so far. That we really, there is a way to actionably be stronger together. It's not just, a phrase which people say. There is, like you said, a framework, a structure, which when put into place can actually achieve that, which I think is really cool. As my final question to you, this may be something which you'll take time to answer. Feel free to do so. It's something which we sort of ask a few of our guests just to kind of see where their head's at, what they're thinking about. So the question is, if you have the utopian situation, which is you have the perfect client, you have a ideal site from this client, the client basically comes to you and says, Wissam, here's a blank check, fill it with whatever you need. Me as a client, what I want is, I want something which is going to impact the lives of the citizen of this place where the land is. Now, wherever the land, size of the land, money, your team, all that's taken care of. You have all the resources you need. What are you looking to add? Or what kind of typology are you thinking about? Or what kind of sector would you want to research? What would you do with that project? You can think about it. It's fine.
to add up in a city,
anywhere. It's
anywhere.
a city, can be suburban, can be city block, can be a village, can be a mountain, anywhere. Could even be the moon.
Yeah, I have a friend who wants to build in Moon and Mars. So
yes, I'm talking about the same friend.
I would,
I would leave him.
I would leave it to him exactly. So I'll focus on Earth.
yeah. So yeah, but I mean, it's the ideal situation. I guess a better way to frame the question is, what's the one kind of project you've been really thinking about? Thinking that, this is what is needed here, and no one's doing it. No one knows if it'll work, but I think that this is what we should be doing. What kind of project would you want to do with that kind of resource?
It's a big question.
It's a big question. You can take your time.
It's like
we can pause, grab a coffee, and come back if you want.
Yeah, maybe it's good.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. And we have just gotten our coffee and we're back. During this time, Wissam has had time to think, reflect, analyze, and we believe he has an answer for us. So, Wissam, what is it?
I have scattered thoughts, actually. So it's few thoughts, maybe if it's merged together, that could lead into sustainable community somehow. I would just talk maybe independently about each item. Recently, we have been, as like our research community, we have been guiding students, and like when we start discussing about the near future solution for architecture, that we said we could merge the current technology, which is, like dynamic movements, with the, fast-paced booking, online booking or online purchasing, which is now the whole world is doing. Maybe not the booking anymore, like hotel booking, but then at least shopping online. So merging architecture with the rhythm of fast-paced input of information, you could lead to two typologies, for example. But then these two typologies, I'll merge them in a bigger picture. Let's say it's a community, sustainable community, where it has a renewable energy, which this is a model already addressed in the market. I'm saying like solar here, not much of rainwater collecting, but could be hydroponics in a vertical way. So you save earth, save like spaces, and that community has public spaces, of course. But then if we get to the two other typologies also, I mean, one of them at least, shopping, we could say is like pushing the shopping in a different aspect. Like currently everybody is purchasing online without seeing the products. But then if we define a mall as a huge space that each retail has already reserved a specific place to display the units with current, let's say, AR, augmented reality technologies, you could create a smaller spaces for, let's say, retailers to enter into a space, and then at the same time, few shops can merge in AR in same space. So by this, you are reducing the retail space, maybe increasing the storage space.
But how would that work? So everyone walking into this open space wears VR goggles, for example.
Yeah.
And each of them one sees a fashion store, one sees a grocery, one sees
at the same space.
In the same space.
Could be. And then you have one area of, let's say if it's a fashion, you have one changing space, or like they hand you the product, because behind the scene you have a big storage automated spaces.
Right.
Because online you cannot sense or you cannot touch the product, right?
Right.
So this space will offer you to touch and get it, in the bag at the end of the tour, and get back to home with the product.
Interesting.
I would say the future of a community, this could happen, like by combining all the uses, like they have a hydroponic vertical farming, residential units which can accommodate your future of working, which is, you work in the same space that you live in. Because I think most of the firms now, they continue working. Even for us, is like 50% of our team is still working remotely.
Right.
And sometimes we find it very efficient. Even like we gather a lot to just communicate thoughts, you know. But I would say the future of work that also could redefine a residential community where maybe you have also more common spaces so people can work remotely but then they can be sustained in the same community. They get the public, the gardens, the organic farming, the retail experience, not a mall.
Right.
You know, like now it's happening in UAE where you build a community and then you have a big mall beside it. That's an attraction to tenants, right? Because they can do their grocery in that space. So this is really an essential, right? In the community. Could be this. I mean, I don't want to limit it to
no,
this,
of course.
Yeah.
I mean, I think an integrated solution, like you said, something which has residential, which has a workspace, not necessarily an actual office, you know, vertical farming, of course, just kind of makes the overall community a lot better. Yeah, it's a pretty good model. It's a very self-sustained, self-integrated. I mean, of course, I'm sure you can push it into, you know, if you can generate your own clean energy on site via, you know, solar panels or, you know, whatever it may be, it would just kind of take it to, you know, like another level and so on. Interestingly enough, could even be built on the moon.
Yes.
If our friend is listening,
yes, exactly.
You know who you are. Yeah. This can be done there as well.
now I think his aim is the Mars, not moon anymore.
So yeah, for sure. I mean the same logic would also apply there.
Yeah.
And I would assume it needs to be a lot more self-sustaining there because there's literally nothing else that you can sustain yourself with. But very interesting answer. I think there might be, if not now, probably in the future, there might definitely be a few small boutique developers who would want to kind of test that typology. So hopefully in the region, we may actually see it very soon. Ideally designed by LAMI Architects, of course. And on that note, I kind of want to thank you, Wissam, for being on the show. As we were discussing, this definitely inspired both of us, which means it's probably inspired at least one more person listening, at least one, if no one else. And that's kind of the aim of the show, that we kind of have these conversations and get these things out there to people, kind of like what you're doing with Plus Future and so on. It's all kind of taking the industry just a few steps forward in the right direction. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you so much.
And if people want to get in touch with you because they want to help you make this mixed use community, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
I would say by email or social media, Instagram, I would say. But even I'm not active.
All right.
Then email is the best way to communicate, actually.
All right. Yeah. Okay. So then we might have that somewhere in our show notes or something. So if you guys want to get in touch, there'll be an email for you to kind of shoot your questions to, or, you know, get advice on whatever it may be. So on that note, thank you so much, Wissam. This was awesome.
Great. That was very inspiring, actually. It just let you put your dream on a list somehow to achieve it. Not necessarily like we are working towards our dreams, but then I thank you so much really for this opportunity.
Awesome. Yeah. And on that note, we will see you guys next week. Fellow aFormers, thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for being part of our journey, and thank you for the immense support we've been receiving for our episodes. It has and continues to be a very bumpy road, but we wouldn't want it any other way. If you enjoyed this episode and it brought you value, please share this episode with anyone who may benefit from it. But of course, if you loved the episode, follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn, send us a little DM, and we may just send you a secret link to a secret episode which we've been working on. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. See you next time. Keep sketching.